All right, we're going to get started here. Good afternoon and welcome to today's Collibra Product Showcase. My name is Samantha Gunnis and I am the EMEA Field Marketing Manager here at Collibra. We're going to kick things off here very shortly, but before we do, I just wanted to take you through a couple quick housekeeping items on how to use WebEx Webinar Console. On the left side of your WebEx window, you should be seeing our slides. If you experience any audio issues during the session, please navigate to the audio section at the bottom of your WebEx window. This is a little microphone. If you're not seeing it, just hover your mouse at the bottom and it should pop up. To the right of the screen, you'll notice the chat and Q&A functions. Again, if you don't see those, please click the chat bubble at the bottom of your WebEx window. Again, if you don't see it, just hover your mouse and it should pop up for you. The chat function can be used to submit any WebEx tech questions. However, if you have any questions for the presenters or comments about the webinar content, please use the Q&A function. Lastly, today's webinar session is being recorded, so if you miss anything, not to worry, we'll be sending those out in the next couple of days. So thank you again to each of you for joining today. We know that there are hundreds of webinars that you could have joined, and we're pleased that you chose to join us. For fun, we'll be running a raffle for each of you attending and pulling a name out of a virtual hat to choose the winner of this super goodie bag. We'll be doing this after the conclusion of today's session, so keep an eye on your inbox. We'll be notifying the winner by email. These are unprecedented times, and it would be remiss of us not to acknowledge the challenges that we're all facing. As a gesture and to support the wider cause, we are taking the liberty of donating 15 euros for each of you attending today to the COVID-19 Solidarity Response Fund for WHO. Again, thank you for being here and helping us support such a worthy cause. So we have an exciting lineup of presenters for you today. We have Stan Christians, co-founder and head of Collibra's data office, and we also have our panel of product experts who will be playing their roles today as employees of the Locust Company. Don't worry if you don't know what that is yet, you'll be hearing more about that later. Just to quickly take you through today's agenda, after we finish up the introduction, I will be handing things over to Stan, who will be setting the scene for our product showcase and talking you through how you can effectively collaborate on data to power data intelligence and drive digital transformation in the business. After that, our panel of product experts, or should I say Cliff Baker, Joanna Zhu, and David English from the Locust Company, will walk you through some tangible examples of the user journey within the Collibra platform. Finally, there will be time for Q&A at the end, so don't forget to use that Q&A function to ask your questions to Stan or our panel should any arise during the presentation. Okay, and without further ado, I am going to pass things over to Stan. Stan, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Sam, and hello, everyone. I'm Stan. I'm one of Collibra's co-founders, and I'm leading our data office where we eat our own dog food and drink our own champagne. All of us know that data is a big opportunity. We're hearing it a lot. It can transform your organization. It can even change the world. But it turns out for many organizations, it's also a challenge. It's difficult to find insightful information or even trust that it's accurate. We know many organizations need, want, and have to become data-driven. But if you want to change and create the culture towards data within your organization, you're going to have to bring the frontline business along on the journey. And it turns out this is one of the most challenging aspects, to get the business on board, to keep them on board, to really get that adoption and ownership established in the business. That's one of the biggest challenges of any large data program. On the next slide, we'll set the stage. 15 emails, 31 hours, 12 people. We'll give some more context to that right away. But this is the situation, bringing the business on board. That this is where we partner with our customers. This is where organizations struggle to serve trusted data to the right people at the right time. A little bit more detail on the next slide about the stage. 31 hours and so on and so forth. This is a situation we saw in one of our organizations, and actually many organizations across the world have the same problem. Whenever somebody needs data or needs to understand what data means, they get an email, like, for example, hey, what does customer lifetime value mean? And then you get into these situations where emails are blasted around, people are losing time, so many people are involved in the mail trail, only then to come to a conclusion maybe days later that you should have known in the first place already. So that's the question. How do you put your data in the hands of the people who need it so you can increase the speed, quality, and confidence of the decision making across every team. And if you look at the next slide, you'll see how big of a challenge this actually is. It turns out that less than 50% of structured data is used in decision making today. Less than 1% of unstructured information is being used. At the same time, over 70% of employees indicate that they actually have too much access to data. They have access to data that they shouldn't be having access to. When you're a business analyst or you're using data to do your job, it turns out that 80% of your time is actually wasted just in trying to find the data you need to do your analysis. So how does a business transform to make those quick decisions based on trusted data? How does it become a strategic asset that drives more effective and compliant operations, and so on and so forth? The real sweet spot, the data engagement sweet spot, is in finding the right balance between offense and defense, control and access. Many chief data officers tend to over-focus on the defensive use case. And as we know in soccer, you can spend a lot of time in protecting your own goal, and maybe you'll avoid the other party scoring one, but for sure you will not score one if you don't go on the offense as well. So defense is all about, protecting data, thinking about privacy, integrity, quality, and so on and so forth. Whereas offense is more about being opportunity driven. For example, how do you use data to grow your revenue, increase your competitive position, and so on and so forth. If we look on the next slide, we'll see one of my favorite analogies, how non-digitally native companies today are actually running this data marathon in the mud. And I don't know about you, running a marathon is hard, but you can imagine running it in the mud is even harder. But before we dive into that detail, let's look at why your organization wants to become data-driven, right? Why are they struggling so hard to run that data marathon in the mud? You really have to think about why you want to become data-driven. What are your external or internal drivers? And I'm remembering our EMEA customer event we did in October of last year, back in the good old days when events were still face-to-face, where we're all stuck working from home mostly these days. So I was having a panel there, leading a panel with 4 data leaders from AstraZeneca, Lloyd's Banking Group, Roche, and Sky TV. And I'll share a little bit of a recap, and of course we can share the full video with you as well as part of the follow-up. So in the case of AstraZeneca, they're more patient-centric. So for them, it's all about speed in getting the treatments to the patient. So they're trying to make quicker and better decisions. They're trying to do better study design through data. They're trying to reduce the time a drug spends in clinical trials. They're trying to bring more transparency to data investigators, and so on and so forth. So it's really holistic in getting better, faster treatment for the patient. That's a driver for AstraZeneca. In the case of Roche, for example, they have different drivers across different parts of the business. But a guiding principle that they use is one that is commonly found in academic contexts, and that's called FAIR. Whenever it comes to data and information, keep FAIR in mind. And FAIR is an acronym that stands for what does it stand for again? Findable. So information has to be findable. It has to be accessible. It has to be interoperable, so you can mix it together. And it has to be reusable. And this supports successful business initiatives across the organization, focused on what is the best decision for the company, whether it's internally or externally driven. In the case of Sky, they were really focused on how to get responsibility through every layer of the organization, driving intrinsic motivation within the teams, and everyone in their case has a role in data ownership, management, and improvements. Lloyd's Banking Group was an interesting one. They're using the DCAM, the Data Capability Assessment Model, which is by the Enterprise Data Management Council. And they're using this maturity framework as a board metric. So their executives, including the CEO, are actually being paid, or their bonuses are associated to this data maturity metric. Very unique in what I've seen, and obviously very powerful. And then in the case of Sky TV, they are really trying to bring data responsibilities all across the organization. So these examples evolve into great strategies focused on data. Obviously, the biggest challenge, everybody has a strategy. The biggest challenge is how you execute, how do you operationalize that strategy. And then we go to Cliff, right? Cliff, who is our frontline business user. He's having to deal with data every day, especially in these days where he's being asked, or they're being asked, hey, we have to change our strategy. What can we learn? How do we have to do this? So business users are very impacted by that email example I gave earlier, by running that data marathon in the mud, because those email examples, it's not just one, right? It's happening all the time in every data initiative, repeatedly and very frequently, and that's the mud that your organization is stuck with. So it's all about the how, right? How can you enable users to find data, to get access to the data so that they can drive that digital transformation? How do you create transparency in what today are complex data processes so people can answer the who, what, when, and where of your organization's data? How do you develop that strong data culture, that collaboration around data so people can actually drive new opportunities? And last but not least, how do you put data in the hands of the people who need it so you can increase the speed, quality, and confidence of decision-making across every team in your organization? And our answer to that how, the way we see it, is a system of record. All of us know system of record. Imagine a chief revenue officer. Imagine that they're running an organization of hundreds, if not thousands of people, and they're trying to do that in a spreadsheet. That's not going to happen, right? Chief revenue officers, the best practice is to use a CRM system. That's a system of record, like, for example, Salesforce for the chief revenue officer. Same thing for the chief information officer, for example. They also have a system of record, like, for example, ServiceNow or Atlassian's Jira, maybe. And the same is true for the data leadership, right? They have data management tools like self-service BI, like Tableau. They have cloud environments like GCP for managing data, and so on and so forth. But again, to manage the people in their organization, to manage data as an asset, that's where Collibra becomes their system of record. And if you combine that system of record for the data asset, together with a proper identification of your business use case, what is driving your data-driven journey, that's how you win. So we're going to hear on the next slide, you'll see Cliff pop up, and we're going to hear from Cliff, and he's going to show you how he and their organization, Locus, is driving data intelligence. But before we get there, I'm just going to set the vision. So welcome on the next slide to our team. We've got Cliff, I got the wrong slide. Thanks, Natasha. So the journey to data intelligence, this is composed out of 5 steps, as you can see. So let's start at the end. Ideally, we want that the Cliffs of this world, that they can shop for data as easily as buying a book online. Right? That's not happening today, except with many of our customers, of course. We want to enable that for all the organizations in the world. You get access to data as easily as you buy a book online. Now, before you can get to that shopping for data point, you have to move to point 1, and you have to lay the foundation. So you have a bit of a journey to get your organization ready for data intelligence. And the foundation is all about aligning terminology, driving the policies, and so on and so forth. And then you enable the access to trusted data. So you provide, for example, a catalog so people can easily find what data and data sets and data products are already available. And then maybe the data that Cliff needs is actually in different sources. That happens a lot. So you need to identify, hey, where, for example, do I have customer or product data, your big data domains, in which systems are they, and maybe where is the overlap. So you need a capability, like a registry, for example, to link disparate data across sources. And then we're coming close to having the delivery done. We're all receiving a lot of cardboard boxes these days from the brave people out there who are delivering items to our home in these times. The same is true for data. How do you deliver that data? And that can come through APIs, for example. That's where data comes from a lot. It can come from other environments, maybe virtual, maybe you need to merge data together. But in the end, we're delivering the data into Cliff's environment, and now Cliff can study the data and derive insight, and then they can turn that insight into a data product that they make available in the catalog in the data marketplace for others to use again. And on the next slide, this is where we'll meet Locus. So Locus is a company that is actually bringing data to the forefront, making it work with the business. And they're really focused in their program around helping business users find data, know where it came from, understand what it means, and trust it. And the goal really is to drive those operational benefits through better transparency. So what we'll see Locus and the team at Locus do is we'll see how they improve their data culture by focusing on business users being able to find the data they can trust. You'll see how they collaborate across their different departments and organizations. We'll see how they use lineage that's easily understood by the business, how they work on compliance, not just with corporate policies and standards, but also regulatory environments, how they track data issue, and how they provide visibility into data quality. And then on the next slide, Natasha, thanks. We see our team. So we have Cliff, the business analyst. He's going to collaborate, obviously, with Joanna through the system, who cares very much about data protection. So she'll be checking a few items. And then last but not least, we have David, our data engineer, who's going to be working with the catalog to make sure that the relevant information is accessible to Cliff. One more slide before we go into the live example. I'm sure that Cliff, David, and Joanna are eagerly waiting to show you what how they're working. And this is Locus's deployment. So at the bottom, you have the cloud native architecture, which many organizations are migrating to these days. You see the operating model. This is how you do data intelligence. And it's very important. Collibra delivers a best practice operating model out of the box. But I've never seen a data intelligence approach that works for everyone. So what you always need to do is you need to adjust or configure that operating model according to your context. You need to apply that into your organization, which needs a different approach because of your culture, your structure, your organization, your processes, maybe even your company's politics. So you always need to adjust the operating model to your needs. And then you have the capabilities like glossary, stewardship, and so on and so forth. And you'll see Cliff, David, and Joanna use the data governance, catalog, and privacy and risk products in their example. Cliff, over to you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Cliff, and today I'm going to be taking you through how I use Collibra and giving you insights into what this means for people like me who work in a role as a business analyst for marketing within Locus, or other titles like data analyst or financial analyst. Really, my role is to be able to create, own, and maintain a lot of the reports, analysis, and dashboards that we have for this area of the business, to pull in information from multiple sources. And I'm supporting the business making more thoughtful and data-driven decisions. day in, day out, I'm leveraging data really to do my job and help my internal customers get better insights. And I'll just share my screen now. It says clicking on this and not getting a share screen option. Here we go. All right. So day to day here within my role, I'm either in the world of BI, creating reports and dashboards, or I'm coming into Collibra, and this is my home dashboard here within Collibra. It's really my jumping in point to find, understand, and access our enterprise catalog here to get the data that I need. Anything from things like free text search to find information, through to browsing then the different catalogs, searching again for different data sets and data dictionaries, or tracking the status of my requests, my access requests for data can all be done through here. Similarly, across the top, I can look at our different glossaries that we have, business glossaries of terms around the business, look up things like reference data or master data, a catalog that we just saw a little bit about before, our policies that we have around our data, and of course, this is a key part here, our data help desk. So if I've got questions about information, want to report an issue, or we make suggestions, I can do that through the data help desk. And funnily enough, actually, just today, I've had an email come in from my boss asking me for information. This is pretty typical for me in my role. So what's it say? Hey, Cliff, can you help me understand how our online sales are performing? I need to know the trends we are seeing and how we could tune the channel to promote our new ranges. So I know we've got a series of new ranges coming up. They're looking for some analysis here to see how we can pump that and promote it better through the online channel. Okay, so as usual, I get these requests with an ASAP. Let's see what I can do again using Collibra. So as well as within the Collibra interface you saw me then before, being able to search and access information, and also in whichever environment I'm in, simply highlight text and use the Collibra for Desktop widget here to bring me back some sort of key results straight away. And that can be on my desktop, that could be on my mobile phone as well, on my tablet. So just highlighted these keywords of online sales, and at the moment it's bringing back all possible hits that relate to those keywords. So I've got things like data categories, processes, business terms, etc. Okay, within this this search. I could filter this on just catalog items only, look at just certified data sets, just look at how data is tagged, for example. But firstly, I'm going to go and have a look in this here. This is a data set here, and I expand this to have a little bit more, look a little bit more at information it contains. So once I click on it, it expands out here to give me the next level down. So first at the top here, I can see it's a new data set, okay, that's been created, and it has 1 rating so far, and that unfortunately at the moment is just a 2-star rating. Let's dig into that. So here's a description. So this contains information of sales through an internet site. It contains order and payment information. These are all the data elements within this data set. Okay, through those there. And here's this rating. So it's got a 2-star rating. This is by one of my colleagues, David, saying unfortunately it's lacking here because there's some missing context here around customer and product information. But he makes a recommendation here for a different data set to take a look at. Well, good, that helps move me along. Just before I go and take a look at that though, I'm just going to drop a quick comment to David so I can mention him here. Say, thanks for the comment. I suggest mark this data set as obsolete for now. post that back to him, because essentially, if it's not a good data set, should we be having it here within the catalog? So back to the overview, and let's take a look at this other data set that he recommends. Right, so this is the customer product sales data. Now straight away I can see this in a different state. It's accepted, okay, so it's been through some approval or validation process. It has a green tick next to it here. That means it's been certified, again, a process of quality within the catalog. And it's got 4 ratings with an average of 5 stars. Again, I can see things like the description. I can see the sensitivity classification here, so highly restricted data. I can drill in and see all the relations and data elements. It's been tagged up already, I can see. And I can look down at the different ratings and reviews. Just it's good, pretty good quality, good feedback from my peers. I'm going to take this recommendation and look at this now within the Collibra catalog. Okay, so that's just launching me back where I was before, so within the web user interface, but now it's taken me straight into the page for this particular data asset. Again, the same information, summary information I can see here in the top left-hand corner, but it provides a much richer environment for me to do more investigation. So first things first, I'll see here some of the business context around it. So I can see this is mapped into some of our key data domains around customer and order. It's mapped already into our glossary, okay, for the digital marketing department. I've got lists of my data elements there, and I can expand that to look at all. And I can see that there's been some sampling and probably profiling, actually, it's been done when we connect to that source, which will give me, really lift the hood on some of what's lying beneath. So let's again drill down a bit more detail in the details tab. Here I can see now the fuller business context. So data around the customer domain, order, and product. Perfect, that's what I'm looking for. This is coming from our CRM system here. And we can see how the data's been categorized. And this, I guess, is why it's rated as highly sensitive at the moment. So let's take a look at the data elements within it. So here's my full list in here, the different column names and tables that they relate to. And I can look at things that have happened during the ingestion, things like technical data types, primary key identification, row count, null value or empty values count, even things like profiling of the information. So if I was to pick a particular column, let's say birth date, for example, I could take a look at the spread of fields there in terms of the data distribution. And if I want to, I can drill into that in a little bit more detail to understand how that works. So this is looking at birth date spread from early to late, okay, row count, sample data, drill in further, and look at even more statistics associated with it. So percentile, quartile, decile, markers in here, the different column characteristics, and basic statistics around it. Okay, so this is giving me good information around, or right down into the column level of the underlying data that's in there. If I come back to the table itself, I can also look at things like sample data of what's available, and I can look at where the data came from. Okay, I'm looking at this here. I select the view that I want. Let's put it in the privacy and business context. Wait for that to load. Okay, let's expand that a bit higher. So here I can see it's pulling information here, this data set from this particular table within the CRM cloud. Okay, and there's my data set up here we're looking at. But I can see on the left-hand side how the data has been categorized. Okay, and this is done via this middle part here, which is our logical model, our logical understanding of data in the various different systems. So around the customer entity and attributes, order, and product, okay, which themselves then are mapped into our business concept domains and concepts within here. And I could spend some time again drilling down within this to understand, data structure and how it's defined. But as I said before, I think this data set here is going to be good place for me to start. So one last thing, actually, before I go, I can see the quality tab is highlighted, and this is going to tell me if there are rules run against the quality underlying data, what the results are. So let's go and take a look. Okay, so we've clearly got several rules running here to check the quality of the data set around size. So size is mandatory. So these are weight, sales order, and then this is a format checking rule. Okay, and I can see the scores then of these rules and the metrics when they're being run against this data set. And these are mapped against several data quality dimensions, so integrity, accuracy, consistency, conformity, and so forth, which rolls up here to an overall score. And we've set here, the organization has set thresholds by which we would assess, fitness of quality for purpose. So when I look down here, I can see, well, some of the bad data here is just around size and weight. I don't think that's not going to be really impactful for me in the analysis that I'm doing, because I'm looking at new promotions here. What I really want to look at is things like customer past purchases and behavior, sort of affinity to take on the new range and to accept promotions. So that's not going to affect me. This is good. I'm going to move forward. So just like, as Stan said before, just like as if I'm, buying a book, I want to shop for this data set. And I do that by adding it to my data basket, just like your shopping basket online, okay? Let's add it to my basket. This is just one asset that I'm requesting. Typically, I might have 3 or 4 on the go at any one time that I'm wanting to get access to once I've viewed their profile within the Collibra catalog. So this is what I have to check out, and I'm going to go ahead and check that out now and request access. So again, this is typical for me. I need some justification. I know my people who review this and approve it want some justification. I think particularly for this as well, it contains some sensitive information, so they need justification. So let's sales analysis for new promotions for the new ranges. Okay. I'd like to get this data, and I've got my boss's ASAP ringing in my ears. I'd like to get this data today, if I can, and I'm going to use it for the rest of this week. Okay, and they want to know the purpose. So this is to support promotions. Let's see what purposes we've got here. So let's type in promotions. He said if his thumbs and fingers work. Okay, let's take a look around here. Competition, no. Okay, promotional activities. That looks like the purpose that's going to work for me. So I'm going to go ahead and submit that. And submit that. Okay. And that has started a workflow now, which will take that request on to the people within the catalog and people within the locus organization. They need to review my request and I hope approve it so I can get access to this information. And that's going to be handing over to Joanna.
Hi, Cliff, and hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen now. Fantastic. So I am Joanna, the data owner of this asset and the data protection officer of locus of this organization. And as a DPO, I am accountable to the business for how personal data is used within the organization. So I receive these types of requests, like Cliff's request, all the time, every day. New business user shopping for data, so they try to access to different data for new purposes. So for me, because I receive so many of these requests, it's very useful to be able to handle these types of requests from my mobile phone. So I have it here with me. I have it connected to my screen. So you're going to see what I'm going to be doing here from my mobile phone. And I'm going to handle this request that it came from Cliff. So I can see here that it appeared already, this task. My new task is this is Cliff's request. And this workflow that I'm showing you here between Cliff and me, between the between the business user and the privacy office team is key. It's key for me as a DPO, and it's key for my organization that they want to be compliant with GDPR. And why this workflow is key? Because we see this workflow as a way of implementing privacy by design. As a DPO, I need to ensure that all the personal data in my organization is used for the purpose that that personal data was collected for. But at the same time, business keeps evolving, right? So every day there appear new users buying for shopping data, right? And trying to access to new personal data for different purpose. As a DPO, I do not want to stop the business. However, I need to be in control. I need to ensure compliance. So this way of managing like this workflow is our way of being in control. The privacy office is in control. And I'm in control because when I click here, I actually can see who is the business user that they try to access to the new data. I can actually see what is the data asset, the particular asset, the particular personal data that this user is trying to access. I can see as well for how long they need the data, and I can see the why, the justification, the purpose, why this user needs the data. So with this, I can go ahead and approve the request. However, in some cases, this might not be enough. I might actually need to check more data because maybe I'm not familiarized with the business purpose or with the data asset. So for those cases, I always have access to the platform. I always have access to the Collibra website. Let me see. And actually, I have access to different business diagrams that allow me to see the privacy context. 1 second, let me log in. And in these cases, I have where I need the business context, I'm seeing the same data asset. So here, the customer product sales data, and I can see how can actually this data asset is hosted in an environment, CRM Cloud, and actually is hosted in California. I can see as well the 3 different data categories where this data is categorized: commercial information, contact information, contract information. And I can see as well the 3 different purposes which that data has already been pre-approved to be used: conducting promotional activities, CCPA commercial purpose, and then recording customer data required for proper accountability. And this first purpose, conducting promotional activity, is the one that actually Cliff is requesting for his use. So with this, I have all the content that I need from the privacy team, and actually can go ahead. I'm 100% sure of what I'm going to do now, so I can actually go ahead and approve this request. A green light from the privacy team. And when I click approve on this request, another thing is happening that is key for our team. This workflow between the business user and the privacy office team is actually logged behind the scenes. So if tomorrow the data protection officer comes to Locus and tell me, well, what are you doing to be compliant with GDPR? I can show them. I can show them this workflow that I have in place for privacy by design. I can show them who has access to what, for how long, and when that happened. And with this approval, everything is done from my side. The privacy team is done. So now the ball is back on Cliff's court, and he can go ahead with his business.
Hi, everyone. This is Cliff. Sorry, I was just carrying on my work here. I was just looking for some definition, some of the terms that I've been using. So here I've been looking up in our glossary what I was going to use and just make sure some of that data's what I think it is. Okay. But here we go. I can see up at the top right-hand side here, I've got a new task has popped in. Also, I have my mobile phone chime with a notice. Okay, so this is related to data sharing. This must be my most recent request. Let's go and take a look at that task. Okay, it is. Okay, related to customer product sales data. I've got a notice here to please accept the following notices, all the following notices for data sharing. Well, what are they? Okay, so let's have a read through. So not to share the data with another party, to erase it without undue delay when it's not needed, use it for the specified purpose, remove PII upon notification, don't move it to another application, or let people know if there's been a data breach. So I'm happy to agree with all of the above there and accept those notices. We'll move forward. Great, access has been granted and it's been completed successfully. So let's click on done here. Now I know for this data set, I'm going to be using my Tableau BI, my Tableau dashboards. So as this request has been approved, I want to take a quick look now in Tableau and see if I've got access to the data sets already. And I can see here that access has been provisioned. So here I've got two consumption data models, okay, one for customer sales, one for product sales, that have appeared now in my projects. So this now gives me the basis. I can go ahead and start my work and start to pull apart this data, take a look at the trends, and get this analysis back to my boss ASAP, hopefully later today, so he can pick that up and start making some decisions. Now I know that once I finish this type of work, that Collibra is cataloging everything I do and also what my colleagues do within our BI environment. So this one's Tableau. We also use Power BI. We use some Looker. You know, a whole host of different tools, as I'm sure you have around your organization as well. Well, what does that mean for the catalog? Well, if I show you here, let me just go into the catalog main screen. We'll see here that as well as cataloging things like data sets, okay, we're also cataloging from our BI tools. So here I'm looking at all of the different BI reports and dashboards that have been scraped from the various different BI tools and servers, and then cataloged and curated just as we would do with underlying data. When my work is done, this will now be a new report that I can make available for other colleagues to search and hopefully access and use what I've done. So with that, I'm going to hand back now, but this time to David. And David's a colleague of mine and Joanna's. And David is part of our engineering team. He's a data engineer. And he is the one who is onboarding a lot of our new data assets and working his magic here so that I can find what I'm looking for and understand the data within our catalog. So over to you, David.
Hey, thanks, Cliff. Yeah, so my name's David English. I'm a data engineer here in Locus. Most of my responsibility involves not only the data engineering side, which is managing the data sets, understanding what our data scientists are doing, productionizing a lot of the information we have, and just generally being a good data engineer. It's also focusing a lot within our system of record, our Collibra instance. You know, this means bringing new data in, ensuring that data gets the correct business context, the right kind of structure around PII, or personally identifiable information, data retention policies, but ensuring that not only does the data exist and is easily searchable within Collibra for Cliff, but also that it gives Joanna peace of mind that the data request that she's receiving, she's able to properly administer and give out information with confidence. Because a lot of organizations before Collibra definitely had, we certainly did, had the view of the least amount of data possible being given to our analysts for fear of regulatory non-compliance or for fear of data duplication and it being used for things that perhaps it wasn't used for. Collibra has really changed that for us within the organization and allowed us to make data much more free-flowing, much more available, and can be used with a lot more confidence because we know it's correct. And I'm going to show you how we brought in some of the data you saw today, how I was able to not only scan a lot of the metadata and the lineage, but to also use machine learning to give it business context and enable Joanna in the simplest way possible. And so the way I did that, it's very simple within Collibra. We're not going to do that live because it can take a few minutes to scan all of the information required. But what I did was I used a Collibra provided metadata connector, and I pointed it to a server, and with a few basic pieces of information such as where is the data, should we do profiling, that kind of thing, I was able to very easily import that information. And in fact, the information that I imported was this CRM refined schema. So this is the schema that you saw earlier. You can see we have one table within this schema. So this was automatically brought in for us via our metadata connector. I click on that schema, that table, and this is going to provide me a lot of information similar to what we have seen earlier. But what I'm most interested in here is possibly, I think, the diagram here. So what you can see within this diagram is some very simple automatically generated lineage. Collibra has not only automatically pulled in that physical metadata, it has scanned a lot of the SQL code and generated this technical diagram for us. Now, for myself as a data engineer, this diagram isn't particularly useful. It's not really one that I would use. I mean, it's very, very good for Cliffs of the world, but for myself, I'm much more interested in the technical lineage that Collibra has brought in for me. And so what I can see here with a single overview is pretty much the entire structure of this server that I scanned overnight. So we can see the traceability of columns flowing through, which is great for my regulatory compliance tasks. And it gives me a real overview of how this data appears in the server, that context, and the ability to change the view here. So now I can see how the tables flow, including the temporary tables, which is a really powerful thing for me because normally I would not have visibility of any of this kind of information, not without digging through that server, and certainly not being made available to my data analyst colleagues. I think the best view for a data engineer is this one. So we can actually see the flow of data right through that server based from query to table. And we're able to, within Collibra, not only view the flow of data, that physical, technical metadata, but I can see the SQL code that was used to generate that information. So I can click through, I can understand exactly what's been happening within the server, I can understand the code, and I can really, really get deep into this data. And so what I need to do now that I'm happy with this information, I'm happy that it's the right data, I need to make this available to Cliff and understandable for Joanna so that she can confidently give people access to that data. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to run what we call an automatic data classification job. And this uses machine learning, it uses sample data, it uses profiling data, and it uses metadata to go off and learn and classify what this data might mean. So it will do things like tagging information to say that it thinks that this is address information. It will tag information that it thinks is a date. And this allows me to very, very quickly assign business ownership to it. Now, the algorithm is very clever. So it starts off fairly basic, but it learns. So we teach this algorithm. We can accept and reject classes. We can add our own classes here to the data that we see. And this machine learning algorithm is going to go off and it's going to learn from this, and it gets faster and it gets more intelligent as we go through the information. And so what I'm going to do here, now that we've got some classifications around this information, is I want to then promote this into business usage. And the way that I do that is once classifications have been accepted, is I can click through and we begin what we call a guided stewardship process. Now, this guided stewardship process is designed to save me hours and hours of work. So when we onboard schemas with thousands of tables, with millions of columns, it's really important that I'm able to classify this data quickly, to understand that it's clean, and to provide that business context and that policy context that's required from both Cliff and Joanna. And the first thing that this guided stewardship process is going to ask me is what kind of email address am I looking at here? So I know that this is a customer email address because it's a customer table, and I'm fairly familiar with that data. Next, it's going to ask me to pick a logical entity, which is very easy for email address because we only have one. But for things like name or date, it might ask us if this is a birth date. It might ask us if it's a full name or a first name, that kind of thing. So just to give us that logical layer as well. And then next, Collibra is going to use that information I provided it to attempt to extrapolate further business context here. So we understand customer name, first purchase date, and address. It doesn't get everything 100% correct because this is machine learning. Machine learning gives us that 80-20 rule and allows us to get most of the work there done. And so I've already probably saved myself a day's worth of work just by being able to do that immediately. Now, if we go back to this diagram, we're going to see a few different things here that are really going to make the difference for Cliff's life, really. So what we have is the original diagram we saw before, and now what we see is a lot of the logical, the business, and the policy and regulatory compliance context here. So we understand that it's been linked to customer, and we saw that Cliff was going to link to customer, and it's given us that business context to allow Joanna to work. Now, I just want to show, check out one more thing, because I know that this is customer information. I want to make sure that we have the right policies attached. And Collibra has automatically told us that this data belongs into a restricted data category. And this restricted data category is restricted data standard. We can read about it here on the right, but it's extremely important information. And we know that because we can see it's HR information, it's trading information, and it's customer information. So the ability for me to confidently onboard this data, to automatically scan all of the metadata, to scan all of that lineage, and then to automatically classify the data and bring on that business context so that we immediately understand this data is restricted, it's a customer data, it's saved me a lot of time, and it's really empowered Locus to be a truly data-driven organization. And so with that, I'm going to hand back now to my colleague, Sam.
Thank you very much, David. So we have a couple of questions here for Cliff, Joanna, and David. I'm going to start off with one for Cliff. Cliff, it looks like there is a lot of internal process definition. How much comes out of the box, and how much would require resources to customize all of this?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. So with Collibra, when we first deployed, we were using a lot of the out-of-the-box workflows. So from memory, there were nearly 20 different out-of-the-box flows. And that handles everything from data access requests to new data set onboarding, raising data issues, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty comprehensive, actually, in terms of covering most of the data stewardship and data cataloging processes you might encounter. But we did have a cause to create a few new ones and actually to modify some of those ones that were out of the box. And that was a job that was farmed out to David's team, and they were using the workflow engine there, which again, comes with Collibra to either amend or design additions to the workflows to suit our purposes. But as far as I know, David, it wasn't an onerous task.
Right, thank you. The next question we have, it looks like, is for Joanna. Joanna, do you also have any transaction trace on the processes? Is the question. Do you also have any transaction trace on the processes?
Yes, audit trails actually applies to all assets in Collibra, and not only to the workflow that I was showing you, but to all assets.
Perfect, thank you. And then one more question. We have one here for David. Do you offer any ML AI technology which can help to automate the metadata collection process when there is need to manage multiple data sources?
Yes, so all of the processes I showed you today with the onboarding of metadata can be automated and they can be scheduled. So every week we can go in and we can rescan a particular server or a particular database or schema to check for new metadata. And the good thing with Collibra is that we're able to use that as an events-based trigger. So if we scan that COM refined schema tomorrow, we discover a new column, we are able to trigger a workflow event that goes off and says to either myself or Cliff or Joanna, hey, a new column has appeared. Can you please classify this column? That would probably go to myself. And because that is then an iterative and incremental build, we're able to very quickly onboard new physical metadata without necessarily going through a lot of the process that we did today. It's a very simple workflow for, yes, I think this is an address column, and it will automatically all be stitched together for us within the tool. So yes, we do that. At the machine learning side of that, again, is the automatic classification. So if we import a lot of new metadata, we can run a machine learning algorithm over the top, which will classify that data. So it will say, this is an email address, this is a date, this is an address. And then using those classifications to retrain the algorithm, we can also use those classifications to stitch the physical data to our technical logical models and our business logical models, so that when Cliff is exploring, looking for customer information, all of that data is automatically stitched together from the logical idea of what a customer is down to the physical data of where that information is stored, along with all of the policies around personal identified information, restricted data, GDPR and CCPA, that also allows Joanna to very quickly approve or deny access requests to that data.
Perfect, thank you so much. And thank you for all of those answers and for taking us through all that. I'm going to pass back over to Stan now, who is going to wrap things up for us. Stan?
Yep. Hey, Sam. First of all, thanks to the team, Cliff, David, and Joanna for taking us through this example. We looked at how Locus, the organization, has the ability to easily find and access trusted data, and that's transformed the way data works for them. We're more than ever challenged with individuals, teams, and departments that are dispersed through remote working, and putting data in the hands of those people that need it should not be compromised. So I'm happy to say with Collibra, the speed, quality, and confidence of decision-making can be maintained across teams as organizations are looking at cost-saving exercises and, of course, efficiency initiatives. I think on this slide, Sam, when you have universal and frictionless access to data, it can be used to drive better decisions, and this is when you realize data democratization. The process of getting there, the process of getting trusted data in the hands of people that need it, this is what we call data intelligence, and that's what we're working on right now. And then on the final slide, you can see it's more than just technology. It's about the outcomes. It's how you leverage information assets to improve internal processes, increase product value, identify new product revenue streams, mitigate risks, and so on. Obviously, to start that journey, as I mentioned earlier, you need to start on the right foot, build the case for data, define your role. You'll obviously need to collaborate with other parts of the organization, so navigate the organization to help you drive change, to create that data-driven enterprise, and as always, start to deliver value to the business using data. This will allow you to build a resilient organization committed to success, drive pervasive outcomes, and realize the value of data with privacy and governance at the core. Thank you very much.